inside a national park that covers more area than most counties in other countries. As someone who grew up in Ireland and then moved to America for college, the first thing that surprised me was the vast openness of the landscape. Everything feels much larger and more spread out than at home. Today I'm going to compare two very important landmarks, the Badlands National Park and John F. Kennedy Arboretum. So the Badlands is obviously located here in South Dakota, and John F. Kennedy Arboretum is in County Wexford, Ireland, pretty close to where I grew up. Both of these places are meaningful in their own right, but they represent very different landscapes and different countries. The Badlands represents the huge open spaces of the American Midwest, while JFK Park represents the tight, greener lands of Ireland. So today I'm going to compare their size, significance, and what they say about the countries they belong to. First, let's look at the Badlands National Park and particularly how large it is. So the Badlands covers 382 square miles according to the National Park Service. To put that in perspective, that's roughly 244,000 acres, which is incredibly large for a single protected park. When comparing it internationally, the Badlands would cover about 2% of the entire country of Ireland. The scale becomes even clearer when we look at the size of South Dakota as a whole. South Dakota covers over 77,000 square miles, which is almost 3 times, so exactly 2.8 times the size of Ireland as an entire country. So even though Ireland as a country is smaller than most US states, on this slide you can see some visual comparisons. So here you can see obviously the Badlands if it were dropped over Ireland and how much of a scale difference compared to South Dakota and some of the surrounding states. This one is the actual size of Ireland were it to be dropped into the US. So you can see there South Dakota is over twice as big, and I honestly think most states in the US are bigger. Around the same size would be South Carolina. Now let's take a look at a much smaller but just as culturally important landmark in John F. Kennedy Arboretum. So the park was built to commemorate US President John F. Kennedy's visit to Wexford in 1963. Kennedy had strong Irish roots. His great-grandparents came from County Wexford, so the visit meant a lot to the people of Wexford and the people of Ireland. Today the park covers about 252 acres, which is very small in comparison to the Badlands. To give a direct comparison, the Badland covers about 244,000 acres, meaning they're roughly 1,000 times bigger than this park. For another comparison, Mount Rushmore National Memorial covers over 5 times as much land as the JFK Park at about 1,278 acres. Even though the park is small, it holds a lot of cultural importance. The Arboretum contains over 4,500 types of trees from all over the world. It also has walking trails, gardens, a lake, visitor centre and a small museum dedicated to the President and his visit to Ireland. Many families go there to enjoy walks, picnics or just nature as a whole. So on this slide, the bottom image shows the Central Park and some surrounding areas, and the top image is the park's location in Ireland. So the red pin there shows the park's location and the blue dot is placed over my home. So to conclude, both the Badlands and John F. Kennedy Arboretum represent the landscapes and identities of their countries in very different ways. The Badlands perfectly captures the vast open landscapes of the American Midwest, and the JFK Arboretum represents something very different in the green, flowing and carefully designed landscapes that Ireland is known for. Even though both places are important landmarks, the size difference between them is incredible. Badlands National Park covers almost 1,000 times the area of JFK Arboretum. This comparison highlights not only the difference between the two parks, but the scale of difference in the geography of the US compared to Ireland. For someone who grew up in Ireland and now studies in South Dakota, it's really interesting to me to see how meaningful landscapes can look so different and mean such different things to their countries. Thank you.